Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ramblings of the Designer. We are a weekly podcast. We talk about the latest in graphic design news from around the web. Hey, my name's Terry and I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm a UX UI designer from the Bay Area and I help bridge the gap between products and their end users. And I'm here with Adam who helps run the podcast. So Adam, take it away.
Hey, my name's Adam. I'm a designer from the San Francisco Bay Area. I specialize in visual, UI design with a little bit of illustration. I like to give companies character.
Awesome, awesome. I always love that line. Give companies character. I still have to make a new one. I think I said that like for almost about a year now, but I can't think of anything creative. So, Adam, so we have something special going on here today, right?
Yeah, today we're going to go a little bit different. We're going to go into game design. And so we're joined this week's episode with Josh Bakken. He's a game designer from the San Francisco Bay Area. He's worked with many toy and game companies for over the years, including EA, Hasbro, Leapfrog, and others. And he's been a producer on some games like Stone Age 2, Dream of Mir Online, and an executive producer on Dungeons Construction Co., the mobile game. And now he's here to talk about Zoo Tiles, which is a company he started, or a product he started with his company Zoo Studios in 2019, and he's launching the products called Zoo Tiles Hime, which is a placement strategy game for your tabletop. So how's it going, Josh?
Hey, it's going really good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, maybe talk to us a little bit more about, I guess, give us an introduction of what Zoo Tile is, and you know.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So, Zoo Tiles is a game that's based loosely on the creatures of the Chinese zodiac. So there's 12 of them out to start, and it's a tile placement strategy game where you and opponent would make decks or have decks, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to complete squares of compatible creatures. So, like in the Chinese zodiac, some creatures are compatible with others and some aren't compatible. And what you're trying to do is basically create different patterns. And if you can get groups of compatible creatures together, then you get to remove those from the playing area and you get to score those as points. And the challenge is that you can each use each other's characters to complete your patterns. So you kind of have to really watch where you place your tiles in this type of game. And then there's other tiles that aren't necessarily the creatures, but they allow you to do things like move the creatures or adjust the gaming state. Those are called like the action reaction tiles. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it's a game I originally designed back in, gosh, I started it in 2003, believe it or not, and kind of put it on the shelf for a number of years, and recently kind of blew the dust off of it and started to take it around to different conventions and show it to people just to see if it held up well over the years. And surprisingly, it did. And enough people were giving it um, enough comments and having fun playing the game that I thought, you know what, I'm gonna this time I'm gonna kind of take it to the next level and actually try to work really hard to release it as a product. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Wow, that's awesome. So I guess I kind of super interested in learning just the genesis of the whole thing, right? Like, first off, where did you even think of like the strategy that goes behind the game, right?
Hmm.
Like this idea of like you take turns, but then based off the other player's turn, you can use their card against them in order in order to complete your set, and
Hmm.
then to like kind of I know you decided to show it around and people getting interest from it, but what was the where I guess where did it come from where you wanted to actually go and start showing people the game? You know, like how did that all come about?
Yeah, well, it helps for that second question. I've been in the game space, if you will. Let's just call it the analog game space, like role playing
Mhm.
games, tabletop games basically without screens. And I've been a part of that community in the Bay Area for, gosh, a number of years. I don't know, maybe it's been like maybe 24 or more. I don't even remember. So I've been going to conventions pretty much my whole adult life, and that have nothing to do with games that I'm currently making, you know. So
Mhm.
I basically knew about this ecosystem or this community, where you could go and you could play games with other people, and it's a really great community. They're very open. Everybody's just there to have fun. So I kind of knew that that resource and those events happened. So that was kind of it was kind of a no-brainer. If I'm working on something, I want to take it to the people who I'm kind of close with and in a community with, and see what they think about it, you know. And so those were some of the first conventions that I took the game to. And as far as the genesis for the game, you know, it happened a couple different ways. I'm I'm a big I'm just a big natural mechanics designer, if you will. So I'm always,
Mhm.
and I don't know why, I don't know where it came from, but I'm always looking at game mechanics. And so what I was doing is I was looking at this one game, and it was a really horrible game. I'm not going to mention the name, but it was really, really bad. It was one of the mechanics where you had a bunch of beads and you put it in a bag, and then you stuck your hand in the bag, and then you pulled out a bead, and depending on the color, you know, things happen. And I was just really bored. I'm like, wow, how can this even be a game? So I just started naturally thinking of like, wow, well, how could I make this better? And so what I thought was, you know, instead of different colored beads, what if somehow there were things inside the beads that did things like, and then I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if maybe, you know how like they have like scorpions put into like resin or whatever.
Oh, right, right, right. Mhm.
Yeah. So I was thinking, oh well, what if one of them was an animal where you reached in and then that would be cooler than just like colored beads, you know? And so then I just started, oh, the animal thing, that's kind of an interesting thing. And so that was just something that kind of um, you know, kind of lingered in my mind. And then I happened to have a conversation with someone who actually was really into the Chinese zodiac, and they asked me, "Oh, what's your animal?" And I didn't know anything about it, and I'm like, I don't know. And so we looked it up. Turns out I'm a pig, which is super fitting. But so I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'm a pig." Like la da 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 da. And then they were like, "Well, what kind of pig?" And I'm like, what do you mean, what kind of pig? And so looked it up, and I guess there's an elemental aspect of it as well. So then they were like, oh, well, you're a fire pig. And I'm like, man, that's actually sounding kind of cool now, like fire pig. So, you know, that kind of sparked my interest. And then I was thinking, there's no game about like fire pigs and like water monkeys, and like it just seems so rich from it, from just like the op I was just shocked when I after I had that conversation, I started to look into, you know, what games are there for these cool creatures and like this cool elemental creature mix, you know? And I was just shocked. Like there's nothing out there. There's nothing out there, at
Hmm.
least that I could find. And so that right there was just like, then I kind of took the idea of the Chinese zodiac animals, and I kind of merged it with this little idea that I had for, you know, things in gems. And tiles obviously aren't things in gems or things in glass, but what I was thinking for the glass ones is like after you pulled it, you would put it on a grid, and then you know how Go kind of works, where you have like the little pebbles, and that you kind of move it, you know, move the things around on
Right.
that that kind of grid area. So I was thinking that might be the same thing for this glass encased scorpion or whatever. You pull that out and put that there, and maybe that had some kind of game component to it. But then when I mixed it with this whole Chinese zodiac thing, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll use, and maybe instead of gems or glasses or glass encased or things encased in little glass pebbles, maybe I'll do tiles instead. And then once the tile idea came to mind, everything just came together. It was like it was really weird. And then one of the biggest, yeah, it was just really strange how everything just flooded together. And one of the things was that one of the great epiphanies about that early um, design or, you know, thought process is when I figured out that square tiles work so well with multiplayer games. So like for instance, I know we're just talking, so you can't really see this, but if
Yeah.
you take a tile and you place a tile down and you're playing an opponent who's directly across from you, they can play their tiles facing them, and you can play your tiles facing you, and you can automatically know, who's playing which tile. But then, since they're perfectly square, off to your left and off to your right, you could have player 3 and player 4 be playing as well. So
Oh
the
yeah.
game yeah, so the game lends itself perfectly for a 1 to 4 player game. And once I thought about that, that almost melted my mind, like how perfect that tiles lended themselves to a up to 4 player game. And then after that, it was just kind of off to the races. I had previously um, been a huge fan of the genre of analog game called collectible card games,
Hmm.
and those had kind of come out in late 93, and then there was just a ton of them that flooded the market from like 93, 94, 95. And I was a fan, not necessarily a fan of all of them, but I dove pretty deep. I was a consumer. I bought them. I learned the mechanics. Some were obviously better than others, but that kind of helps you as a game designer to learn what you like and what you don't like, to kind of take it all in. And um, and so that kind of helped me as well in terms of how to design a game where somebody does something maybe with their deck of something, and then an opponent can do something with their deck of something, and how those interactions should take place. A lot of that was formed from being pretty heavy into the collectible card genre. And
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so all those things kind of pulled together to form uh, my answer to a fun game using those concepts, and that's Zoo Tiles.
I'm just wondering, Josh, how
Mhm.
many characters are actually in the game?
Yeah, well, there's 196 tiles in the complete set,
Oh
but those
wow.
Oh, wow.
196, yeah, and every word that you read on them, there I wrote. So, so if anyone out there gets the game and they look at it like this is horribly written, yeah, well, you have me to blame for that. But I try to edit it and play it with a lot of people. So far, it's been working. So, but I am the one to either praise or blame for anything you see as far as writing it. But yeah, there's 196 tiles in the game, but those 196 tiles are more or less revolving around the 12 animals of the zodiac. So, for instance, you'll have the basic dragon, but then you'll have a bunch of tiles that support the dragon and do dragon-y type stuff. Same thing for like pig or ram or tiger. Each of those animals are a very core component of the game, and so you those are the tiles that you kind of put into the playing area, and you butt up against other creatures. But then there's a bunch of support tiles that like for instance, let's just take dragon for instance. So if I had a
Hmm.
dragon tile in play and I wanted the dragon tile to move over, then one of the support tiles would be called like flight or swoop. And so I would play that, and that would allow me to move my dragon, in some other area on the playing on the in the playing area.
Oh, wow. What is the age group?
Well, yeah, you know what? So my answer to that is it depends on what country you're in,
Okay.
because oddly enough, so I've taken the game. At one time, I took it to the Netherlands to show, and my mind was so blown away. So gaming in Europe is a little bit different than I think it is. I should say tabletop gaming, analog gaming, is a little bit different than it is perceived, I think, here in the US. Maybe not so much more, but this is when I first designed the game. And so that was like 2004 ish. Um, but families would come to the table, and there would be these little kids. And so I designed the game that an 8-year-old, 9-year-old could get it, and then it's basically 8 and all the way up through adult, basically. But these kids would come by and they would sit on their parents' lap, and they'd be like 6 years old, and I'd be like, oh well, I'll just patronize this kid and be like, oh hey, this is kind of how you play, blah blah blah. And then I'd actually start playing them, and they would do some of the most amazing things I had ever seen.
Oh,
Like
that's so
the whole
awesome.
and I was like, how is this little 6-year-old doing this? Like, I can't even see like some of these combinations that they're seeing. And I was just completely blown away. So I want to say, 8 or 9 and up, but if you got some whiz kids out there who are super into strategy tile placement games, it could probably go even a little younger than
Oh,
that.
this is perfect. Parents who have kids,
Yeah.
get this game.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And well,
That is awesome.
here's the thing about the game, and again, you guys, once I get started, it's hard to stop. So please just dial me back. But but to that point that you just made, the whole reason for this game to exist is because what I wanted to do was I wanted to add something to the world. I know this probably sounds kind of weird, but like right now, kids and games. Um, the game industry itself, I think, kind of patronizes kids. It kind of doesn't truly. It kind of is like, oh, here's like here's a very simple game. Let's just say, for instance, Candyland or something, right? So the kid has Candyland, and it doesn't really challenge them a lot, and also what it really does is it kind of punishes the parent. So the kid that might have a favorite game, and they take the game. Hey, mom and dad, I want to play this game, and the parents are like, oh man, not that again. Like my brain is like melted from playing this, and it's not necessarily very intriguing for the parents, and it's
Mhm.
not something and the parents just do it because they're patronizing really the children, or patronizing might not be the right word, but they're doing it because the children want to play this particular game, not because they want to play the game with the child, I guess.
Yep.
And so what
Yep.
I was trying to design was a game where if a child brought a game to a parent, the parent wouldn't just like cringe and be like, oh, not this like thing that is just very very simplistic, something that they could both play together. And the goal of it, and the dream is that a parent and a child, or any kind of caregiver and a child, I guess I should say, are playing the game, and the child, starts to play it a little wrong, or maybe they don't place a tile in the ideal place. And so then the caregiver or the parent has a choice. They can either just let that slide and just say, hey, we're having fun, or they can maybe just make a suggestion and go, hey, you know what? Yeah, you did that, and that's pretty cool. But if you put this over here, then this might happen, and kind of be able to have a little teaching moment with, a little bit of logic or a little bit of strategy, as opposed to just like playing a game that you're just feeling, not super enthusiastic about, but you're just doing it because you love your child, right? Does
Mm.
that make sense at all?
I mean,
Oh
I
yeah, absolutely.
I would just dominate them and have it be a lesson learned.
Oh, which
Sorry, kid.
yeah, yeah,
That's just
yeah,
you,
you could do
Adam.
that
You
too.
just take them to
You could
Yeah.
town,
do that.
man. You just take them to town. Bully,
Like,
that's
Yeah,
mine. I win the games. No, no, I think that is an excellent, like, you know, especially now of just having all the kids being at home. It's something different for them to do and not be in front of the screen 24/7 as well.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this wasn't so much an answer, or trying to get kids away from screens necessarily, but I do think that there is. I don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about that 100%, about how much screen time kids are getting. Um, I will go out on a limb and I will say that um, I don't think it's good. I saw a commercial once. I might be getting myself into a lot of trouble if I say this, but you know what? YOLO. Let's go for it anyway. So it was a commercial, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like, um, I believe it was kind of a few years ago, so I might not have this exactly right, but it was basically a mom having like some mom time in the backyard with a glass of wine, and a child came up to her, and I think she handed them a tablet so that the child would like go away and like use the tablet, and it was like it was supposed to be like a good thing, and I was kind of looking at it like, I don't know how I feel about that. So
Well, in this stay-at-home time, they are the new teachers, I guess, for the most, or the new caretakers for our kids. Like, here,
yeah,
go give mama a break for an hour or two.
yes, exactly. Sometimes you need to, for sure.
But I could totally relate to what you said about about having playing the games that your kids want to just for the to help them out, but like there are some that we have there are like the just the most boring of games. They go, please, pick any other game but this one. And yeah, so I could totally relate to what you said about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like there's a lot of little things about the game that I think parents will like about it too. So like there's just like little phrases and stuff that maybe are for from movies that parents would get,
Ah,
reference like kind of like light pop culture references, that'll just kind of appeal to them, and yeah, I try to sprinkle little bit of that in there as well. So hopefully it works.
it'd be interesting to get into, I guess, the process of what it's like to make an analog board game or an analog game from just idea to conception, right? Like what goes into it? How long did it take you to develop it? I know
Mhm.
you've had it for years, but like, I guess from idea to physical product, how long did that take for you?
Yeah, it took about 4 months,
Oh, wow.
believe it or not. It seems like a pretty short time, but like I said, once the core that I described earlier kind of fell into place, like I'm using tiles, I'm putting tiles in like in a structured area, and I kind of had a background of how games like that should play.
Mm,
Then it was just a matter of, and I knew I was going to make it in the Chinese zodiac. Those were the creatures that were going to be involved in the game, right? So from there, it was like, okay, well, I got the 12 creatures. Now let's go ahead. And this is another thing that made the game so easy, and it's also something that allows the game to be super accessible to everyone. That's the thing I'm finding with it is that with a lot of things in pop culture and like fantasy based stuff, you have to teach you kind of have to want to buy in and learn the lore around it. But one
mhm,
thing you don't have to learn the lore about is animals, right? Everybody knows, like, from the time they're in kindergarten or even before, everybody knows what a rabbit does and what they're supposed to do, right? Everybody knows what a tiger does and it's supposed to do. So once I made the decision to go that route, it was pretty straightforward. It was like, okay, what's a bunny do? Bunnies hop. So I'm going to make a tile that allows a bunny to hop. What else do bunnies like to do? Well, they're very snuggly. They're very, they're very furry, and that's kind of a cool mechanic to it. And what are the other ones? Gosh, there's a bunch. But like I mentioned before, what do dragons do? Dragons fly. Dragons breathe fire, and dragons like gold. So those are some of the things that you can build off of. And each animal, thank you Mother Nature, has their own, except for dragons because they don't really exist and fly. But aside from that, every animal has its strengths and weaknesses. And so, at least for this particular game, it was it was like shooting a fish in a barrel basically. 196 tiles, it sounds like a lot, right? But
yeah.
when you think about if you make 12 tiles that focus on each of the animals, I mean 12 times 12, that's 144 right there, right? So the hard part was balancing out, like, thinking of really cool things to do and then balancing them out in relation to the other animals to make sure that no one animal kind of dominated the game. I would say that's probably um, one of the one of the more difficult aspects of designing the game.
Mm. Then you know, now that you have the product, right?
Mhm.
How does it work with like, okay, now how do I show everybody this thing that I created, and how do I get it out there? Who do I talk to? What kind of, how do you look for ways to advertise?
Yeah. So the first thing that I did, as I mentioned before, was when I brushed it off, I took it to a convention, and I didn't take it to a big convention. It was a very small convention called Sundial. It's called the Sundial Comic Con, I think, in
Mhm.
Reading, up in Reading. Very small group, just because I wanted to see. It's very inexpensive to get a little table, and you kind of show up and you just kind of put your game out and you kind of see who shows up, and I was just floored at the response that when I did that again after all those years, and that just really put a lot of wind in my sails as far as going forward with it. But you can never do enough conventions, and then once you get to a sense of like, okay, this is almost universally every time I take it somewhere, people are telling me that there's a game here, and I had a lot of fun,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
parents are bringing their kids over, and they're giving you genuine responses. So then the next thing you do, at least for me, all I can really do is speak for myself, is you
Hmm.
start to go to actual game stores, and you start to talk to owners and managers of game stores. And that's kind of the next thing I did. And again, you kind of just start taking things up the, what I would call, I guess, the sales ladder or the retail ladder. You start to talk to them, you get their feedback. And again, I was doing that, and every store owner I took the game to, um, we played it, and they were like, yeah, this is really fun, I can sell this. And so once you start to get that kind of response, then it's time to maybe think about going to like a trade show. Like I just went to the Gamma Expo 2020 in early March, and that's kind of where the rubber hits the road for whether or not you really do have something or you're just kind of fooling yourself. And so, fortunately, when we took the game to Gamma, the response from retailers was better than I could have even imagined. And
Awesome.
so, yeah, and then after that, to your point, like how do you start to advertise? Well, we're not quite there yet because the game was supposed to launch in June, but because of the things that are happening in the world, it might not launch until probably around October for a number of different reasons. But um, but what we're doing right now is we're running ads on Instagram. Believe it or not, is we're taking
Hmm.
art. We're not even running the ads of the tile game, but just the art. And we've taken, I think it's 10 or 12 different images, and we're just kind of throwing it out there and checking which ones people like the best. And that's kind of helping us decide what we should put on the packaging, like which couple tiles are the ones that are attracting the most attention.
Ooh,
And
nice.
so we're kind of doing that, and we're finding out things that were just super counterintuitive to what we thought. Like we brought boxes to the Gamma convention, and I thought, oh, these are two great tiles. These are two great images. I want to put them right on the box, right on the front of the box. And so and and that was fine. I got one little piece of feedback that maybe one of the images wasn't intriguing enough or whatever. But what was interesting is when we came back and we're running these ads, again, we're not trying to sell anything now. All we're trying to do is check to see if people like it or people click through to something. And one of the images that I was so sure of, it was so lighthearted and it was so fun, and every time I looked at it I smiled, but it just came in like dead last.
Yep.
And no one, hardly anyone was liking it. Nobody was clicking on it. And some of the ones that I was a little like, that I didn't think would be one of the leaders has been absolutely the leader. So that's kind of some pre-marketing, if you will, that we're doing right now. And another thing you got to do is go off and you have to find a distributor. Like, unless you want to sell directly from your house,
Hmm.
you really need to find a partner who you can work with, who already has inroads. Like, I could, I plan on, and I can basically handle the greater Bay Area, on a person-to-person level with the store managers and owners. But if I want the game to go outside of the Bay Area, then you have to have somebody, or a distributor who already has all those kind of connections with
Mm.
stores all across America and maybe even internationally. So that was kind of one of the reasons I went to Gamma, was because those are where distributors go. And I went there. I was all gung ho. Oh, I'm gonna go get a distributor. They're gonna see my game and they're gonna buy a million of it, you know. And I was like, yes, that's, go to Gamma. That's the key. And I was just heartbroken when I got there, because what I found was that the distributors, they don't want to talk to anybody but these people called consolidators. And so you have to go through a consolidator in order to talk to a distributor. But a consolidator um, basically takes a cut, and then the distributor takes a cut, and
Yeah.
that's it, two cuts before you actually get it to a retailer who typically wants 50% off. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, oh, and I was just learning all this stuff just recently, just like early March. Like, and even though I had been in the game industry more or less, more loosely, I guess, and for a number of years, this whole consolidator distributor thing was very, very new to me. And so I was like, oh, that's a real bummer. But fortunately, since then, we have been very fortunate and able to hook up with a distributor, kind of, which is super rare as far as I know. And so we kind of we were able to cut out a consolidator, and we'll be working directly with the distributor. And that was great. I mean, that's something that just recently happened for us, which is absolutely huge for the game. So,
That's
um,
that's awesome. Congratulations. And you guys heard it
yeah,
first here on our podcast.
yeah,
That's
did most
awesome.
likely did
Oh my
absolutely.
gosh. That's great. It's funny how what you mentioned earlier, how you thought, okay, this art's gonna work in this, and anytime you do UX or like UI design, we always design for ourselves and we don't design for our users. And by you throwing out all of your images and stuff, that's kind of like A/B testing as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Big A/B testing, A, B, C, D, all kinds of testing going on. And and it's not super expensive either. So, if anyone who hears this is thinking about making a game, or, please test your images. You don't have to spend a lot, but get a little bit of testing in there, because I can't guarantee it, but if it syncs up with my experience at all, you're going to be surprised what you start to see and what patterns start to develop, for sure.
See, and that's why I like just hearing about this whole idea too, because a lot of what we do talk about in our podcast is like the design process, and that does include UX, A/B testing, and um, just putting things out there and then seeing what responses you're getting. So testing
Hmm.
out your designs, and you're doing this. A lot of what you're doing is pretty reminiscent to what the whole process is anyway. And so it's great to hear that you know what we're doing is pretty much what's used in almost any capacity. So if you're really into the UX process, this process does not only work in just creating websites and apps, but you can use these same principles in creating almost any product, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I was just talking about the images. There's tons of feedback that I've gotten over the
Hmm.
years for just like the way the tile is designed. Some people have said, I know we're just talking, people can't see this, but the tile has icons that run up and down the side of them. And so some people were um, saying, oh, well, this doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So because of that feedback of showing it to people, we've made some pretty significant changes to the design of the tile. And so it's just and it's just made it night and day better, and better in explaining the game, better in people better with people being able to understand the very simple concepts of the game. But you just gotta get it in front of other people and just really think about their responses. I mean, I'll give you another perfect example. This isn't
Hmm.
necessarily with the visual design of the tile, but one of the complaints of the game was that sometimes people would have a hand of things that they couldn't use and they felt stuck in the game. And so I had heard that a couple different times. So I came up, you know, I had to address that because I don't want people feeling that way when they're playing the game. So I came up with the concept of being able to ditch two tiles to draw a fresh one, and that that adjustment there, even though it's not a visual design adjustment, it's more of a game mechanic adjustment, just completely changed the game. There was no more frustration anymore. I've never heard a complaint about that. So it's just you got to get it in front of people. You got to let them kick the tires. You got to let them look. You got to let them give you the honest feedback, and then really think about how you're going to change that for the better. And that's both from the mechanics standpoint and from the visual design standpoint.
No, that's awesome. What you just said there is basically the whole user experience of like
Hmm.
the whole experience of playing the game, how they feel. As you mentioned before, if the person that's playing the game feels stuck, then that's friction, and you definitely do not want friction because of you want a way out. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. I want people to love this game. I want no hard feelings at all.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, so pretty much what I've heard so far has been pretty great, right? The process was really kind of quick and easy. The response has been great, but maybe what about the challenges that you faced? Were there any sort of roadblocks or um, any just sort of
Oh,
obstacles that came in your way?
tons. I mean, tons of roadblocks. I mean, we're all Bay Area parents, right? So, I mean, honestly, one of the biggest roadblocks is just being able to fund this thing, right? I mean,
Mhm.
going to Gamma, that sounds great, right? Let's all go to Gamma. It's free, right? No, not really. And like getting the boxes, designed, the prototype boxes.
Mhm.
I hired a really skilled craftsperson for that, and I'm really really happy with the work they did. But you know what? I mean, these are local people, and it's not. It's other people have to eat. So I mean, one of the big challenges is just kind of funding it, and it's all been self-funded, so I don't have any investors at all. This is just me putting my own money where my mouth is, and trying to deliver something that I really feel strongly about. But outside from that, um, it's one of the, I work with a really great designer, a visual designer. I just want to throw his name out there, TJ Frias.
Mhm.
And he and I have been working together on projects for, gosh, almost 20 years now. Maybe it's even over 20 years. Nah, it's about 20 years. And you know anytime you're working with someone and you have a vision in your head, you got to express that vision to the designer, right? And so I wouldn't necessarily call it a challenge, that it was a especially difficult challenge, but it was something where it's like I have something at the tip of my tongue, like, or at the tip of my eyeballs. I know how I want this thing to look, and just kind of expressing that, and just iterating with TJ over and over and over again. The perfect example, if anyone sees the Zoo Tiles logo, obviously they're not going to see it listening to this, but in the future, if you look up Zoo Tiles and you see the logo, what you'll see is Zoo, ZU, and you'll see these brush strokes, basically, that make up the Z and the U, and the U is kind of smaller, and the Z kind of makes an oval shape in a way. But man, oh man, that took a long time to get
Yep.
right. Um, it was There were so many iterations, and I knew in the back of my head, I knew what I wanted, but there was just no reference for it anywhere other than just working. Like the first iteration of it, of the Zoo Tiles logo, was completely different. It was like very tribal looking, and it was kind of like almost Hawaiian-esque, if you will. And but then, and I was like, no, it's too blocky. That's not what I want. I want something that flows a little bit more. But I just didn't know how to get there. And then it was just kind of like, again, working with him and saying, no, it's too thick. And I still have the emails. Like, he would send it to me, and he'd be like, I'm like, teacher, let's try brush strokes. And then he sent me like really thin brushstrokes, super thin brushstrokes. I'm all, no, those are too thin. Can we fatten them up a little bit? And then like fatten them up a little bit. Oh yeah, yeah, okay, that's better. And then can we take the downstroke from the Z and angle it slightly different? I mean, I'm telling you, this thing took forever to do, but I'll tell you what, I remember he sent it back to me, and when I saw it, that was it. That was it. And I was like, it, done, mission accomplished. I'm so in love with the zoo in zoo tiles that yeah, I was just like, I couldn't have been happier. And still to this day, I want to make no changes to that whatsoever. That is locked and loaded, and I love it. But it took a while to get there, so that was kind of I wouldn't call it a challenge, but it's just a necessary evil, right? Whenever
Mhm.
you're trying to design anything. So I would say those were some challenges, I guess. What are some of the other ones? Well, another one is just like, another one is I really, really, really wanted to have this thing made in the USA. I just really wanted to, but I
Yeah.
was going around and I was getting quotes, and literally this is kind of my first stab at manufacturing anything, like really manufacturing. Like, you got to find a factory to make something, and it was like it's a third cheaper if you find a great factory in China to make a really high quality thing. You can get that done. So do I want to pay $9 and then have the game be like $50 at retail, or do I want to pay $3, and then with shipping it over it might be $5 per, that would be like the cost of a game, versus like $5 versus like maybe $12 to have it shipped. And
Mhm.
you gotta kind of make those choices and decisions. I was so pro. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, let's see if I can even get it made in the Bay Area, and it's just like, you can get it made in the Bay Area, but not too many people are going to be buying your game at the
Yeah.
price that it ends up being, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of disheartening, I guess. That was kind of a challenge finding. Fortunately, I found a really good um, factory that works with a lot of great game companies in the U.S. And so they sent me over samples, and I was like, oh yeah, these are great. These are really good. So I'm happy with the quality of the product. I wish there was a way that I could get it, kind of help support the local economy a little bit more, and have people make it here. I even thought about trying to make it myself, like, oh, let's
Mhm.
go get some machinery and I can learn how to like I can
Like,
learn how to press tiles out, and then I started looking at the cost of machinery, and it's like, no, you don't want that
like you
cost.
just go to the Kinkos and they'll
Yeah,
print it out
right?
to you, right?
I
Print out
wish.
on sheets. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily call those things challenges, but they're just things that are just part of the process of making something.
Wow. I mean, from beginning to end, if you can just share your thoughts on one thing that you really, really loved besides your logo, and one thing you just, oh my gosh, you kind of dread, maybe?
Sure. So I dread setting up a business. I'll just tell you that right off the bat. I dread it.
Yeah.
Like, it terrifies me, right? So like,
Mhm.
I'm in the process of finalizing an LLC for this, and this is so anti game making, right? It's so anti, like, oh, I can go from 1 minute to making these cute little actions for bunnies to do, to like signing away something where the IRS can just come take everything I owned, right? There's just like so opposite of the spectrum. And I want to live in the part where I'm playing with bunnies and dragons. I don't want to live in the part where I'm like on the hook for like filing taxes for an LLC.
We
So I
have we have the perfect person for you,
do you?
Christine. She
Oh.
was actually on our podcast, I think, what, 3 weeks ago, and she is phenomenal when it comes to money and everything. So if
Oh,
you're
really?
looking for somebody, I
Oh, I
recommend her.
am. I
we're
am.
yeah,
Oh,
we're
I
talking
see?
about a finance coach. Yeah, and
I
so she was
absolutely
giving us some
100%.
tips.
If
How
if
fun.
she is an accountant or has any
Yep,
association with a good
yep,
accountant, I
yep.
am all ears, because I, that's the least thing I want to deal with in this. So that, I can tell you right now, is the least, the thing that like makes me
Oh,
cringe. Oh,
See,
what?
aren't you glad I asked that question?
I
You come up
am.
here and you find yourself your tax person. See, only on Ramblings of a Designer you find a tax person.
Oh
But
yeah.
anyway, but
That's
what
right. Thank you very much, Terry. That is
that is,
awesome.
that is,
And
we will definitely give you her name and her contact information, and you just tell her we sent you.
I will.
Sure.
Believe me, I will.
Okay, so anyway, back to the question.
Oh
So,
yes. So I the thing I cringe. So the thing I love is and you guys just have to take my word for this. I'm not trying to hype this up more than it actually is. And I'll even tell you a story to kind of support it. The thing I love the most is the reaction that I get from people who play the game. And I'll tell you a little story about what happened. And this is a true story, and I've got witnesses. So if no one believes me, we can call them. But this is when I first blew the dust off the game after so many years, and I took it to that convention. I think I said the name of it was Sundial Comic Con in Reading, and little teeny table, if you can imagine, a little teeny convention. Actually, it was probably like maybe lucky if there were like 50 people there to showing their stuff. So you can kind of imagine a small little room with a bunch of small little tables, and I had one of those tables, and a kid came up. And it was interesting because he didn't engage with the game at first. I was showing somebody else how to play, and he just kind of walked by, and I could tell that he was interested, but he didn't say anything. He just kind of looked at it as he walked by. And then he did a few more of those, kind of looked at it as he walked by. And I'd say this kid was like around 11 or 12. And so finally, he got the courage to come up, and he's like, can I, this looks interesting. Can I play? So I started playing with him, and he loved the game. He's not the only one, but this was a really interesting kid because he didn't want to leave. He just wanted to stay and play again and play again and again and again. And then I was like, well, and other people were coming by, and I kind of wanted to let them play as well, but I wasn't going to be rude. So I let him play, as much as he wanted to. And then finally he kind of got up and left and went and looked at other stuff, and then I was able to play with other people. So that was really great, and he was laughing and he was having all kinds of fun. And then it was a 2-day convention. It was Saturday and Sunday. And so then the next day comes around, and I'm sitting there, and I see the kid come up, and he has his dad and his older sister, and he brings them to the table. And the dad looks at me and he's like, "What is this thing?" He would not stop talking about this all night long. And
oh my
he
God, that's
forced me
awesome.
to come here to show him so he could show me this game, and he wanted to play you more. And so I was just blown. I it was just so awesome to have that experience where this is exactly the age range that I was kind of aiming for, right? Like the 9 to 12, they call them tweens, right?
Mhm.
For them to really enjoy something so much that they would take it. So he hopefully, when it comes out, will get a game, and he can take it to his dad, and his dad won't cringe, right? The game is there's enough there for adults, that there's enough strategy that they can go as far and as deep as they want. And basically, what I kind of wanted to do, just as a little side point, what I wanted this to do was to be a more fun version of chess in a way, right? So like chess is great. There's tons of people that play chess all over the world. Chess is going to be
Mhm.
around forever. But from my perspective, when I sit down, I'm not necessarily jumping to play chess. To me, it's a little bit dry. To me, I could have a little bit more like umph and fun to it. And so that's kind of what this kind of the goal that I'm shooting for, is a more fun version of that. So hopefully if this kid, he'll get the game, and then he can bring it to his dad, and they're both having, a lot of fun with lots of animals and stuff, and hopefully have a great time. But yeah, instances like that, like experiences like that, I mean, to me they're priceless because um, it's just really cool. And I've seen reactions of people like that to the game, but not quite like that. There's been a lot of people who really like the game, but that was just a really cool one. And to see him just react so strongly to it, was just really cool. Yeah. So yeah,
Great.
that's kind of the thing that I really love when I see people react well to the game.
So let's say moving forward, right? Is Would you say that this product is like a work in progress? Do you plan on making iterative changes to it? It will, I guess, the artwork, right? If maybe you apply additional cards to it, but like, will the gameplay change? Are you planning on making updates to like the artwork, or how do you see it going moving forward?
Yeah, um, so the actual product that's going to be coming out is what's called a sampler set, and it's basically two decks, um, and each deck has different animals in it, and so one of them has rams, rabbits, and pigs in it, and the other one has horses, tigers, and dogs in it, and those are two pre-constructed decks, is what they call, and so you kind of
Hmm.
play those two decks against each other. Now, what you might notice from me just saying that is that's only 6 of the 12 animals, right? So the first
Uh,
product is going to be the starter set 1, and then the next product that we're going to release shortly after is going to be starter set 2, which has the other animals, the other 6 animals in it. And those tiles can all be mixed together. If you really wanted to buy a couple versions of the starter set, you could add more tiles of one, and take out tiles of another, and really start to customize things however you might want to do that. So we'll have the starter set 1, starter set 2, and then we'll release the core, all of the 196 cards, because the tiles available in starter set 1 and starter set 2, even when those both are out, that won't those still won't represent all the tiles in the game. So it'll be starter set 1, starter set 2, and then I'll release all the tiles in the current iteration of the game. Now we are using the version that's coming out first is called Zoo Tiles Hime, which Hime is kind of means princess in Japanese,
mhm.
and so we're using kind of an anime inspired artwork for these first versions, but the original version is what we're calling Zoo Tiles Classic, and that has art that was created a number of years ago. And so what we'll probably do sometime, some way, is even though we're leading with the Zoo Tiles Hime, we will probably introduce the same game and the same mechanics, but just a different art swap, basically, to some of the more classic art, if not all the classic art. So we've got a few things in the works. So we've got our work cut out for us in terms of getting those products out. But then even after the full set is out, the full 196 is out, then there's opportunities for expansions, because the first 196, those just deal with the basic animals. They don't tap into that whole fire pig, that thing that I was talking about earlier. Like
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten into the element stuff yet. So
Oh, really?
Oh
so
my
we're
Oh.
just talking
God.
about yeah, we're just talking about the regular animals are in this first set. Then I gotta bust out the fire versions and the wood
I'm gonna
versions and
play
the
now.
right. Yeah, I know. I want to get it out now. I
I
know.
know. This is awesome. Oh my God. We
So I'm
definitely
gonna be
have
pretty
to.
busy. But
Well,
yeah,
oh well, like in between there, I'm sure Adam, I would love to have you come back. So when you're ready to release all your like new features or function, you can talk about it on here again. I
yeah.
think that'll be great.
I, hey, I'll come back every week. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's great. I know it'd be great to just see, because right, like you're setting out with this like first iteration of it, but I feel like it'd be great to see like how these elemental changes will like really like change the game, right? Like maybe flip it
Yeah.
over on its head. 'Cause now it's like you have this whole like power-ups of characters to expand upon the game. So that's great that like the way you set it up was like it's a progression that you have something to build upon. So that's awesome that you have that.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna keep me busy for a while, but I'm gonna be very happy in my work.
That's great. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. Terry, anything else from you?
Um, yeah, actually, this is kind of going off. um, to left field a little bit. Normally, so when you start without games, right? There's these games, and then you have these characters. Do you
Hmm.
have like a main character that will spin out to like to a book or to like a different
Mm,
story
That's a
version of
great question.
line? Because
So,
like
oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
I don't mean to it's so weird. Well, no, actually it's not weird. Uh when you were talking about dragons and creatures and animals, my kids, they've been so into like dragons lately.
mhm,
Um just from DreamWorks, right? You know, How to Train Your Dragon.
Yep.
yeah.
Hmm.
And they know every single dragon and their name and the color and every supernatural power. That's all they talk about. So
Hmm.
like that kind of got me thinking about your games. Like, wow, is there gonna be storybooks? Is there gonna be add-ons just from the board game?
Yeah. So, yes, the answer to your question is yes, there will be. And as I mentioned before, this is Zutile's Hime first set that's coming out. They are all so the classic version kind of focused on the animals. Like when you looked at a tile, it was an animal. This is more like this is more uh, animals, but they also have human characteristics. So it's kind of like
Mhm,
a human animal hybrid type situation. And so there's of um, a whole group of human animal figures in this Zutile's Hime, and so there is active thought into not necessarily books right now, but because this is kind of anime based, definitely manga to support it. We're thinking about doing like mini mangas to give out at like conventions and things like that. And there was even talk of doing well, here's an interesting thing. So when we were at Gamma, somebody came up to the booth and was like, I was trying to figure out what anime this is from, and that was kind of music to our ears because it's like, well, it's not yet, but we like the fact that you're thinking that the quality is good enough that it could be, right? So I'm not actually the creator of the Hime IP. That title goes to T. Araki, who is the art director for the Hime part. So I'm basically the mechanics guy, and he
mhm,
was the one who had the idea to do this Hime anime inspired art. And so he's been creating all these characters, and they don't have names yet. We just call them dog and pig, and but but they will. The ultimate goal is that yes, they will have names. They will have external storylines outside of the game. But so yeah, that's the answer to your question is absolutely. We're thinking about that, but we have to take kind of like baby steps, I guess, if you will. We want to at first just get the game out there, but
Absolutely.
there's a strong desire that once people start, like for instance, I mean, I was talking earlier about the tests that we're doing on Instagram, and one of the things that just kind of blew us away is that dog, the character dog that we just call dog.
mhm,
That one is leading every other tile, and I don't know why. But for whatever reason, the universe of Instagram has spoken, and it's getting far more likes and far more clicks than any of the other images and any of the other creatures that we're putting up. So now we got to think, oh, well, people are responding well to this. It's kind of a no-brainer to start to think how we might develop that character further, right? And what
mhm.
stories we might build around them. So yes, that's a really long answer to your question, but the answer is yes.
That is so exciting because
Yeah.
I mean, now, I mean, anything is like impossible. Um, and just hearing your story and just the insights, you've been doing this for X amount of years and you're okay, I take a break. And then you brought it back and like here you are now. So, I mean, ideas don't really never die.
Mhm.
No, they really don't. And sometimes for anyone out there who thinks they have a really good idea, um, no matter what anybody tells you, if you're a part of a community and you kind of live and breathe that stuff and you like, I know this is a good idea, just don't let that die. Try to get it in front of people, try to get some independent response to your ideas. This isn't the first game I've designed. This isn't the first um, tabletop or an analog game I've designed. I designed a game even before this one back in 97. It was called the Hero Work system. And and I
Mm.
still am so gung ho on it. And I remember taking it to the American International Toy Fair in New York and showing it around to everybody. And they just weren't getting it. And I showed it to one person, and he was like, "Yeah, Josh, I get this, but you know what? I can't. My salespeople just won't understand this. Like, they don't understand." And you know what it was? It was the precursor to the Skylanders figures. It was an anal. You guys remember those where you take a figure, you put it on a stand, and it would kind of have the figure be live in a video game. Do you guys remember that at all? They were called like
Yeah, like
Skylanders.
Yeah.
almost like amiibos, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. So it was basically that same play mechanic, but without a screen. It was basically you played it on a tabletop, and
Hmm.
but the mechanics were very similar in that you had a figure that basically could do things, could could move around and stuff like that. Um, but so that was probably about, I don't know, 97. I don't know. It was at least 10, 15 years ahead of its time. And so the point is that maybe that's where your current idea is right now. But I would say definitely don't give up on it. And if you can get it in front of people and you get the sense that people are giving you a genuine feedback that this is a good thing, then just slowly slowly start moving forward with it. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. It really doesn't. I'm getting as much joy out of it today as I did those many years ago, and hopefully I'll continue to have joy with it, that many years in the future.
Oh, that's great. One thing about the artwork too, sorry, just circling back to that, is the way that they were designed. I felt like they were pretty smart because to kind of describe it, you have these characters which are anime figures. Let's say they're young, young females, and but you have just like small animal elements, kind of like ears, animal ears sticking out of them, or a tail. And the idea of like cosplay, that you could, if this
Oh
grows
yeah.
and expands into, or marketing, selling additional products, like you just sell the ears. And if people enjoy the game, they'll have something that you could build upon, even upon that. So I like the idea of like this can go a lot of different places, now that you've started to build the whole this thing.
Yeah. I mean, cosplay is definitely something that would be really, really cool to see if we were at like Anime Expo in Los Angeles. That's a huge anime. I might even be the biggest in the world. And we had plans to attend that, but
Yeah.
the COVID thing kind of put that on the back burner for probably another year or so. But yeah, I mean, there's really no limit to where we can kind of take this, but we just have to really stay focused on just doing the
Hmm.
baby steps and getting the first version out there for so people can
Enjoy it.
so people enjoy it and start to play it, and then from there, I mean, even just the addition of, I don't know if I mentioned this during the actual recording, but I think I mentioned it before. We took it to this Gamma trade show and people were telling us, hey, where's the sleeves? If people are
Hmm.
really liking this and they might want to protect these tiles, so do you have sleeves for them? And it's tiles, it's not cards. So there's a ton of card sleeves out on the market, right? But we're not doing that. We're doing tiles which are square and thicker. So there aren't any. So we have to make them if we want them to exist. So that's another thing that we have to make. And then mats, people were like, "Oh, you got to make, yeah, you know, everyone's going to love mats. If you put this art on like a mat that they can play, that'll sell like hotcakes." So we're like, "Okay, let's do mats," which were those are two products that we didn't even think about going into the trade show. So there's a million things we want to do, but we just have to really kind of pull it back until we get
It's time.
something out.
Hmm. Right,
Terry,
exactly.
we'll get you those books. I promise. As fast as I can get them made, I will get them to you.
They'll be out
Yeah.
before the game is out.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. No, 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 no.
No, I know that's
Yeah.
the whole putting the cart before the horse thing. Uh,
No, no, that's it's definitely exciting to see here just the whole process and then gaming and and what steps you take, what worked and what didn't work. And it, I think when you said it the best, when that youngster, came in, you know, and brought his family. And when his dad says he wanted to shut up with the game, that's all he talked about, And when your child has like interest in something, that makes you interest in it because it's like, oh wow, he actually like really, really, really liked something.
mm,
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of proud of the fact that I the game really does lend itself to some critical thinking. So it's not just not to put down any other type of entertainment, but um, I do think that if you can make something where kids are actually engaged and thinking and doing some pretty deep strategy, I think that might be a little bit better than them just kind of like staring into a screen for watching, who knows what, I don't know, something on YouTube like exploding jello or something. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just kind of rambling, but yeah, it's very cool to see that because I feel really good about the product and I feel that I feel it does have a purpose and I think it's very lighthearted, but can also teach some really cool ideas in terms of like strategy and thinking and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And here's another thing. So that wasn't the last I heard of that kid. Believe it or not, I didn't even. So when we went to that little convention, we didn't have any social media presence whatsoever, and we still don't have a big social media presence. You can look up Zoo Tiles on Instagram, and you can find Zoo Tiles on Facebook, but that's kind of very recently we put those pages up. But what's interesting is I did make a Facebook page, and we didn't promote it or anything. Um, but then all of a sudden, I got a message on that Facebook page, and it was like, "Hey, remember me? I'm that kid." And this was probably like 8 months after the convention. So somehow, some way, it was on his mind enough that he wanted to find it again. And he looked through different social media. I guess he at least looked on Facebook, happened to find it, and then shoot me a message saying that he like remembered the game and when's it coming out, I really liked it, blah blah blah. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
No, that's not interesting. That is good.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
word of mouth is the best thing because, as you know, as a parent, if there's a game that is not screen time, that basically your child would enjoy and engage and actually engage more than an hour and a half,
Mhm.
I mean, that's time them spent well educating and learning. So, yeah, I would have to
Yeah,
agree.
I hope so. That's the dream. That's the goal.
Yes, and then also before I forget, Christine's information is on our episode podcast 92.
92, got
mhm,
it.
mhm. Well, with that, Josh, I want to thank you so much for spending some time teaching us a little bit about the gaming industry. It's been amazing. It's been amazing just hearing the process and that it's kind of interesting and fun, and it doesn't seem um, like it's unobtainable for somebody to just go out on their own, especially self-funded, and like just go and try to make
Do
something on
it.
their own, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say one last parting thing
Yeah.
about one of the reasons why I really love the toy industry and the game industry is because there is such a low barrier to entry. Like if you, I could- one, once I could talk on this all night, but I'll leave it pretty short. But if you look at all the great toys, like all the classic toys that have been created um, throughout history, pretty much, they all came from more or less independent designers, like the Mr. Potato Heads and the Barbies and stuff like that. So, for anyone out there who has a toy or game idea, um, and you want to see it through, I would definitely recommend going for it.
Awesome. All right. So to wrap up, we'd like to do our where we can find each other on the internet. So Terry, where can we find you on the internet?
Well, before we do that, do you want to do the
Of course.
question?
Sorry about that, Terry. Forgot about our question of the week. What do
Well,
we have this week?
well, that's okay. Sometimes I forget
Oh,
your
yeah.
stuff, and then you remind me. That's why it's called the ramblings. Okay. So we got a question, which I think this is a great question. So in this field, whatever field you are in currently, we are learning, growing, and evolving. What advice would you give to yourself if you can go back in time when you're starting? So, who wants to take this first?
Josh, go ahead.
Want me to take it first? So
Yeah.
I think what I would tell myself is that um, don't rely on the industry. Don't think that if you, well, let's just take it from a product perspective. And really, my expertise and my experience is around toys and games. So if you're gonna make a car, this might be something different. I don't know, but from my experience, what I would say is don't think that you're going to take a game or a toy that you design and think that the proper way to get that to market is to go to one of the bigger corporations, so like a,
Mm,
a Mattel or a Hasbro. Like if you think you have a great idea and you write them a letter or something, you send it to them, um, and they turn you down or whatever, don't necessarily think that that's the end of the road for your idea, because I did that. That's kind of the reason what I would tell myself from back then. I spent a lot of time. I mean, it was great. I met with Mattel a number of times, and I met with a lot of toy companies a number of times. But um, there's just a lot of stuff that goes into a decision from a major toy corporation or game corporation that doesn't necessarily have to do with the quality um, or what you are bringing or your product is bringing to the table. So you might have a great idea, you might take it to them, and there's a huge number of reasons why they might not take it, and it doesn't necessarily have to. It isn't necessarily that your idea is bad. So if you do that and you do get rejected or whatever, don't take it personally, and don't even let it take your product personally. Um, if you have faith in your ideas, then it just might mean that you have to do this on your own, and that's okay. So I spent a lot of time flying around the U.S., going to Mattel, going to New York, talking to tons of people, and it's it's energy and time and money that I probably would have been better off just focusing on the product itself and kind of slowly doing it myself. I'm not talking about Zoo Tiles. I'm talking about a game that I did previous to that. So that would be my advice. Um, don't necessarily take it to one of the larger corporations in the area of the product that you're trying to make, and really think about if you can do it yourself. Even start super small. That's okay.
That is excellent advice. It really is. Just like in anything you do, even in UX or even starting a new career, because there's a lot of people that interview at at other places and they go, oh, that's my dream job. Oh, I didn't get it. Or basically you went through, the other interviews and they gave it to another person. But as Josh was saying, just don't give up.
mhm. Yeah, like for me, the advice I would have given myself is that maybe just in the design industry, or it could be in any industry, there really is no peak where you can say I've kind of made it, or I'm now a designer, I can just coast. Like every field is a constant study and progression, and you got to just keep going, and it's a never ending a never-ending process. You have to just always keep studying, and there's always something to learn. Every field kind of evolves, and you have to evolve with it. And so, you know, one is that there's really no bad time to start at any level, right? Because everybody's learning and evolving at different rates, but everybody's kind of, like it. So I don't know, I don't know how to explain it, but you could go onto the road at any time, and you'll still be in the right direction, and yeah, just that, right? And you got to just keep going because you're always learning. So keep learning. Start now.
Start
So did
now,
early
and then,
so was earlier add-in a slacker? Because that's what you're making
Oh yeah,
yourself sound like.
I was a big time slacker. I was barely not a slacker till like maybe a year ago. That's the hard part. I'm like, oh man, if I could give us my stuff advice 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh, you got to get back at it.
yeah, yeah. And another thing is, I think you mentioned this too, Josh, that basically there's just no timeline. Don't give yourself a timeline. Just small steps.
Absolutely. As long as you're taking baby steps, it's fine. At least, I mean, that's my perspective. That's how I felt about it. Like, we worked together in the past. We weren't working together in a game company, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that I was not thinking about, you know, what I wanted to do and the off hours, right? And the weekends and things like that. Um, so sometimes, you're not always focused on exactly what your dream is or whatever, but that's okay as long as you kind of keep it in the back of your mind and slowly work towards maybe having that see the light of day someday. That's all right.
Yeah, and I think that is a great segment to end on. And then I'll throw it back to you, Adam.
Then I'll throw it back to you, Terry. Where can we find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. My handle name is Flaxenink, FLAXENINK, and you can find me on Insta, which is Flaxenink.designs, and you can find me on TikTok, which is just Flaxenink, and of course on LinkedIn. So, Adam, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Adan Cepeda. That's AdanZepeda. And you can find me on Instagram at adanz.designs with an S at the end. And Josh, what about you? What about Zoo Tiles? Where can we find Zoo
Yeah,
Tiles? Where
so
can we find you?
absolutely. So you can find me anywhere you can find zoo tiles. So you can find zoo tiles on Instagram at ZU_tiles. And you can also find us on Facebook. There's also a Facebook page for it. And then me personally, I'm on LinkedIn, Josh Bakken, JoshBakken. And yeah, I don't have a Twitter or TikTok, but maybe I should get in on that TikTok stuff. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, actually, TikTok is, I do it more out of fun, and it really helps with your being creative, I think. It's like a
Oh,
real fast outlet for me, and it's really fun.
cool.
So, and then also one more thing. Anything else you wanted to share, a shameless plug or something maybe you want to talk about? If you don't, that's totally fine too.
For me, it would just be, guess what? Zoo tiles, and it'll be and we're trying to get it out around October. So the game's gonna retail for 29.95, so $30. So please, anyone listening to that, take $30 of your Christmas money and just kind of like set it aside, and then be checking Instagram and Facebook for Zoo Tiles posts. It'll be well worth your $30. I hope.
Awesome. And then, sorry, last question here. You guys don't have a website yet up, where to order it. Not yet. Is that in the
Uh,
plans?
so yes, we do. So we do not have a website up yet. We're kind of using Facebook and Instagram is kind of like where we're sending people. Also, we have a post on. We have a section on. A website called Board Game Geek. So for
Oh,
any
nice.
board game geeks out there, we are on BGG, and so you can check us out there. But um, we will have a website, and we are. I can't say it yet because we haven't signed the papers yet, but we will have an e-commerce partner, if you will, and
Mm.
who should be. We're
Mm.
going to be doing pre-orders, and they will be able to ship it anywhere in the United States. So it'll be very easy to get a hold of it once the game is ready to be released.
Well, that is
Hey.
very exciting news, and you hear it here
You did.
first.
You
I
did.
know, that's
Yes.
awesome. Oh my gosh. So, yes, that's where my $30 are going
Yay.
for my kids because they love board games. It's just crazy. Board games and books. That's
Cool.
their biggest thing. So,
Mm.
Good, good, good.
awesome.
All right. Well, that's it for us. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, aloha. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.